On today's episode of Locked On Pistons podcast, we're going to preview Cade Cunningham, the franchise player, preview his upcoming season, his third season in the NBA. Stay tuned for all that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Johnson with 1 second to go.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review whenever podcast platform you're listening to this on. There's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle with any purchase. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. Again, that's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle with any purchase. In today's episode, we are joined by friend of the podcast, Hal. You can find him over on Twitter at HalBritius. We're going to be previewing Cade Cunningham upcoming season. But like we did in the other previews, we'll start off with a quick review of the player so far into their career. Then we'll move into the preview for the upcoming season, and then we'll move into having expectations or saying what our expectations and predictions are in the final segment. So we've already done Asar Thompson. We did Jane Ivey. Yesterday, we did Asar Thompson with Bryce Simon. I did Jane Ivey all alone last week. So we're moving down the roster. Hal, thank you for coming on to the podcast, man. I really appreciate it. But let's go ahead and get into it. So Cade Cunningham missed the entirety or basically the entirety of last season. So it's going to be tough to do a review of his second season. So basically what I'll ask you is, how do you feel about Cade Cunningham as the player so far through his career? Where do you stand with him thus far?
Well, I'm disappointed, and that's only because we didn't get to see, we haven't gotten to see the best of him, and that just sucks. But also extremely excited, right? That's the only place you can be when you have a guy who misses most of his sophomore season. I think it's maybe hard to reach back and maybe traumatic to reach back 2 seasons to his rookie season. But like, that was the season people will remember he didn't have a roll man for half the season, right? Until we got Marvin Bagley. So we've never even gotten to see Cade in like a great situation for him to thrive. So, looking back on what he's done, it's like, okay, this is all really exciting. These are all these skills that, we saw coming out of college, and I think he delivered on what we expected. He had a season as a rookie that was nearly rookie of the year caliber. He gets hurt, and now it's just like exciting, waiting to see what happens when we finally put him in a team that's a little more stable. Maybe an offense that's going to have a little more juice to it around him, and hopefully we finally get to see the Cade that was promised.
So obviously, it is disappointing that we didn't get to see him at all last season, or we got to see him, but only for like 10 games. And that was very disappointing. And obviously, it has a lot of excitement for his upcoming season. The offseason that he's had thus far with Team USA, that Rico Hines runs, has everyone just juiced up for his third season and in the NBA. But what I want to go with this, Hal, is when he was drafted, there are some things that he was billed to be ready to do out the gate. One of the things was his outside shooting. So I'm going to go that route. I want to talk about how I think he's matched. I think everyone feels like he's going to be the franchise player. I feel like he's going to be the franchise player for the Detroit Pistons. I think he's a future MVP caliber player. I'm that high on Cade. But so far into his career, the one thing that hasn't came along like a lot of people expected it to was his pull-up three-point shooting and overall three-point shooting so far into his career. So I think if we're just going to review him so far into his NBA career, which is legit, has he even played a full 82 games? I know he missed the beginning of last season or his first year, and then only played like 10 games. If he has, it's like 83 games, I think.
He has played 76.
Okay, so yeah, he hasn't even played a full NBA season yet. But so far through 76 games, if I were to give a quick review of Cade, it would be, I think he showed why he's the number 1 overall pick. He's going to be the franchise player. If there's one area that he has to improve on and one area I need to see him improve on for him to get to that level that I think he can get to, it's obviously the three-point shooting and the pull-up three-point shooting. But everything else, I think he's flashed just about everything you want to see, from the playmaking to not being an absolute negative on defense. When it comes to finishing around the basket, I bring this stat up all the time. B-Ball Index tweeted out, when you take into account the gravity, the difficulty of his finishes, and the spacing of finishes, he was the best finishing rookie of the last 10 to 15 years, I think it was. So I'm cool with all of that. I just think that if there's one area he has to improve on, it is his outside shot.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, there's a couple of nice positives. First, he came out of college shooting 40%, right? There's a baseline there. And then of course he's a 84-ish% free throw shooter on, plenty of volume for us to be confident in that. So this is a guy who has plenty of touch. And then last year he didn't shoot well from three, but he did shoot, 40% plus from the mid range, right? I'm going to double check, but yeah, 49% on long twos. So there's definitely shooting touch. There's definitely not just mechanics to do catch and shoot, but those mid-range pull-ups are all pull-ups, right? So there's a baseline there of pull-up shooting, which is what you really want to see for a guy like Cade, where it's, he's going to have an on-ball diet of offense. I'm not that worried about it. I mean, the reports say not only did he have this busted shin, right, but that he had it since college, right? So we're talking about a guy who probably wasn't getting the lift he expected on his jumpers for 18 months. And that includes an ankle sprain to start his rookie season as well, right? So he missed 20 straight threes, something like that, right? He was 1 for 21 or something to start that rookie season. So I think this is just a bunch of events that took him, just completely out of rhythm. And hopefully we're going to see an uptick. Now, I don't think he's going to walk into this season being a 40% shooter. I'm not saying that, but I think we're going to see a much more confident 3-point shooting Cade than we did.
So besides the 3-point shooting, before we move on to just previewing his upcoming season, is there anything else that you want to point out that you think that you'd want to see really improve in this upcoming season, or something that maybe he struggled with, or something that you feel like he hasn't been as good at that you maybe were expecting? Is there anything like that through his first, 76 games of the year? Because we could just see, anytime I talk about Cade, it's just glowingly. Every time I talk about on the podcast, it's glowingly, because I love Cade. I think Cade's going to be the franchise player for the Pistons. Like I said, I think he can be a future MVP player. I think he's going to win Most Improved Player of the Year this year. I think he's great. So I think you have to balance it out, though, sometimes by talking about things he has to improve on and things he has to do to get to that point. So I brought up his outside shot. Is there anything else that you have seen through 76 games that maybe is different, not just the 3-point shot?
Well, there's a lot of fine margins for a player like Cade, right? We've already seen this player who is, very similar to a Luka Doncic and what he can do. He's just not efficient at all these things. He's got these baseline skills, and they just need to become, all-star level skills for him to become, an all-NBA style player. And that's going to be a gradual improvement, right? Hopefully that shooting efficiency just keeps climbing, not just the 3-point shooting, but also, hopefully the mid-range stuff stays really efficient, right? He was, again, upper 40s on those long twos, but can he keep those long twos on upper 40s, still be composed in the pick and roll, and then get better in the floater range? That was an area where he did struggle still a little bit, was kind of those short twos, the jumper floater range, getting to the rim more often, selling contact more. I think he drew plenty, but, selling contact, getting fouls more. Those little margins are going to add up. I think the big thing, though, is trimming the turnovers just a little bit, and then the big strides he can make on defense. He was a good defender for a rookie. I think he's a really cerebral defender. He's clearly seeing the floor really well. And I think the next step is just continuing to make an impact, not just on the ball, but off the ball and as a communicator. The big thing I think this team has lacked, mostly because they just haven't had a veteran center for the past couple of years, is defensive communication. And that was the thing I think they missed a lot last year, was Cade's voice on the floor, not just on offense, but on defense. And I think that just seeing him become a leader on that end is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing where he goes this year.
Yeah, they're really going to need him to be a voice on defense and be a good defender, because of how they were really bad defensively this past year. I remember before the season, I always bring this up to my listeners. before the season, I said, you know what? I'm tired of going defense and sacrificing offense. Can we sacrifice some defense to get some offense and like actually have a fine offense? And then I watched 2 months of basketball with the Pistons. I was like, yeah, I'm done.
You don't
I
want
made
that.
a mistake. I made a mistake. I was wrong. I don't ever want to see what I had to watch last season. That defense, seriously, it was just, I think they might have had, I strongly believe they had the worst defensive wing room in the entire NBA. I think it was bad. It was pretty bad. So, Cade,
the guard room wasn't much better either.
Well, yeah, it definitely wasn't. But with Cade coming back with his size and length, you figure he's probably going to be guarding, whether it's wings or bigger guards, something along those lines. I think that's an area that they're going to really need him. And hopefully it looks like he's 100% and he's ready for the season. So hopefully he's able to help on that end as well. You brought up being able to draw fouls. That's something that he's definitely going to need to do. Even though I feel like you said, he draws a lot of contact as he hasn't been given very respectful whistle. Maybe learn how to sell those, get some more free throw attempts. That will help his efficiency as well. But enough of all that. When we come back, we'll preview his upcoming season, some storylines, some things that you really want to watch for in this upcoming season for Cade Cunningham. Stay tuned for all that. But first, I've got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, Birddogs. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs shorts do exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts, too, that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice the movement. Birddogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long as well. It's the answer for everything. Birddogs are functional for any occasion. You want to go out golfing, you want to go out and play some basketball, Birddogs is there for you. You want to go on a date, Birddogs is there for you. You want to go for an evening out with the boys, you want to go up to the bar, watch the game, can do that. Go to the pool, you want to go work out, you have to go to work. Birddogs works for all of those situations for you. They are amazing. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. Again, that's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. Promise you. Again, that's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA to get a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers. We're trying to get there by the end of this upcoming season. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Or you can leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. So Hal, let's get into this upcoming season now. 4K, that's what everyone wants to hear about. That's what everyone's excited about. This upcoming season, again, I said this to Bryce on Asar Thompson's preview. We're not doing expectations yet. We're not doing predictions yet. We're just doing a quick preview of his upcoming season. So what I want to start this with is the first thing I want to talk about is like a potential storyline or something that you think fans should really be watching for involving Cade this upcoming season. If you had to pick one thing, what would that be that you think all the listeners need to be watching for when it comes to Cade this upcoming year?
Like the partnerships, the synergies, right? It's what does Cade look like playing off of and with Jaden Ivey, and vice versa, and what does he look like playing with Jalen Duren, and vice versa. I think those two relationships are going to define the Pistons ceiling for this season. If that pick and roll partnership really is working and those two are kind of an efficient offense and everything kind of flow out of that, I think we're going to be really happy. If we start seeing some my turn, your turn stuff with Cade and Ivey and they don't really, figure out how to share the rock, I think that, that's going to be a frustration. I think both of them last year looked pretty good together. And I think Cade's kind of player that kind of molds himself to the team. So I don't think it's going to be a problem, but yeah, that's easily the number one thing for me is just what does it look like when these guys start gelling together?
So my number one thing is how are they going to craft lineups around Cade? Because you want spacing in a general sense. You want spacing around Cade with a lob threat, but I highly doubt you're going to be getting 10 minutes straight of Cade, Joe Harris, Bojan Bogdanovic, Isaiah Livers, and then Jalen Duren, or like Cade, Alec Burks, basically just Cade with vets that can shoot and then Jalen Duren. Like, I don't think you're going to be getting that many minutes of those. You might get some of them, maybe, but I don't think you're going to get very long stretches of those for very long stretches of time. So I want to see what kind of lineups Monty Williams decide to craft around him and how they go about using Cade in these lineups. Because like we talked about on the Asar Thompson preview with Bryce, if they do decide to start Asar Thompson, it's not just the cleanest fit offensively. It's not just throw him out there and it's like, oh, you guys will figure it out. No, I think it can work. I think it causes a little bit, you need to have a little bit of creativity to make it work, but it's definitely not one of those where it's like, you're going out and playing pickup basketball and it's like, here you go out there and do your thing and everyone's going to be straight, because it's not the cleanest fit. So if they do go to, try to play Asar with Cade and Ivy and Duren, how does Cade look with that? Does that hurt Cade? Can Cade play with that? If they do decide to go Bojan and Stu, can Cade play with that? Is that enough spacing for him? That's why I'm really watching for number one with Cade, is that I think, like you mentioned in the first segment, his rookie year, I think he probably easily wins Rookie of the Year if he has a role guy the entire year. Like, for the entire first half of the season, I was on here screaming, please, he needs some kind of rim threat. Someone that has some kind of gravity rolling to the rim, someone that can catch the ball rolling to the rim, like finish around the basket. Like, he needs it bad. And then once they got Marvin Bagley, remember what he did in March. I think they said he had like a month that we hadn't seen since Michael Jordan's rookie season. So it's like he was playing extremely well. So Cade's great. I believe that Cade's going to be great, but he needs functional lineups around him, and not just functional lineups. He needs, if you're going to try and test out like a lineup with Asar Thompson in the starting lineup, he needs his coaching staff to put an offense out there that makes sense and that can flow correctly with him at the head of it. So that's probably the biggest storyline that I'm watching for, is who are they surrounding him with?
Yeah, and to build on that, it's not necessarily just what's the starting lineup. It's what are the situational lineups they throw out, right? Is there a lineup where it's like Asar at the 4 and Stu at the 5? They're going, smaller, and suddenly it's like Asar is kind of your role man, right? And it's kind of a 2-man game between these two wings. Stuff like that. Stuff like was it the Utah game last year? I have a terrible memory for these things, where they did the kind of like 5 out, and it was.
Oh, yep, I talk about on the podcast all the time. Utah, January 7th of his rookie year. I know it's my favorite game he's ever played.
So, those kind of lineups, right, where it's like, hey, what we normally do doesn't work. We need to get something going, or we really want to see something specific out of Cade. What are those wrinkles that Monty Williams puts in? Because, Casey did not like to change those lineups very much, right? He was pretty steady in those rotations. And that'll be my question is, all right, now that you have, I think, a lot more talent on a team, you have a lot more options. This is a team where the bench isn't like otherworldly, but like there's a lot of different ways you can configure these lineups. What do we see where it's like, hey, if something needs to happen, where does Monty Williams go to get the best out of Cade and out of Ivy and out of everyone else? And those could just be 5-minute stretches that say a lot.
All right, so let's move on to the next part I want to ask about concerning Cade's upcoming season. Again, not an expectation or a prediction. What's one part of his game that you think everyone should be watching for this upcoming season? If you had to pick one aspect of his game that's at the top of the list that you think listeners should be paying attention to for this upcoming year, what part of his game would that be?
The secondary passing. The stuff where he's playing off of Jaden Ivey and the ball comes to him and he's making the instant decision that keeps everything moving perfectly. I think that is Cade's superpower. I think that's the thing that sets him apart from a lot of just on-ball players, the ability for him to make really quick decisions and just kind of keep everything moving when he's not the focal point is something that I have loved about his game since high school. And I think that's the thing that will, like when Jaden Ivey is really trying to be, the star of the show or when he's being told to be the star of the show and getting his number called, that's the stuff that Cade can do off the ball that I think is really going to make, things tick over.
My answer is it's the obvious answer, and I could try to go a different route, but I think I don't feel like I'd be doing my job if I didn't just mention the outside shooting. I really like that's going to be what unlocks him. If his 3-point shooting never were to come around, he's not going to reach the heights that we believe he can reach. if the 3-point shooting does come around, which the shot looks really good. And Rico Hines, I heard really good things about the shot at Team USA. His camp says that he feels really good. He's getting lift on his shot again. Like we're hearing all good things about his shot after the surgery. His like you mentioned, he's getting good lift on the shot now after this surgery. So if that were to come around and get closer, again, that doesn't have to get to 40% like you mentioned earlier, but if it comes around to where he's a good 3-point shooter this year and he can hit pull-up threes and he's drawing some attention in pick and rolls, guys are coming up higher on the screen because they don't want him to just walk into a three. Guys aren't just going underneath screens and forcing him into shots that he doesn't really want to take. If those are shots that he feels comfortable taking, he's hitting at a higher rate, then it's going to be hard to stop Cade. I think if his 3-point shots come around, good luck. Good luck the rest of the NBA. I don't see how you stop him. I seriously don't. He's too good of a passer for you to send help at him, not make you pay for it. He's too good of a driver to, play too close up on him. And if he can be a good shooter to make you pay for going under screens and playing off of them, good luck. Seriously. That's the only thing I feel like it's really missing from his offensive game like that, for real. Obviously the drawing free throws that we talked about in the beginning, but the 3-point shot, I think it's the easy answer. Maybe it's the cop-out answer. It is what it is, but I think it's the obvious answer, and I have to say that's the one I have to go with. That's the biggest thing, the biggest part of his game that I think everyone, not just in the Pistons fan base, but I think nationally is going to be watching for. Is that 3-point shot closer to what it was in college, or is he still inefficient from that area like he has been through 76 games of his career? So is there anything else you want to preview or mention before we get to some expectations or predictions?
I just think, when it comes to that 3-point shot, it's important to remember that those pull-up threes, right, the stuff that really unlocks it for him doesn't have to be 40%, right? 34% is a totally functional percentage for guys like that. We see guys like Donovan Mitchell, for example, where he was getting respected for his shot because he was so willing to shoot long before the percentages really climbed to hyper efficiency. It's just about being willing, being comfortable, and just not shooting 28%, right? If you can get to 33, 34, and then you can make the open corner ones and just be respected, that's all he needs right now.
Correct. Absolutely on point there. All right, so when we come back, we're going to have our expectations, and I'm going to force Hal to make some predictions when it comes to Cade's third season. We'll stay tuned for all that. But first, you guys got to hear from some of our sponsors. Actually, you guys got to hear from this one real quick. DoorDash. Missing the syrup for your pancakes or just ran out of your favorite coffee creamer? With DoorDash grocery delivery, you can get what you want right when you need it. And I've been using DoorDash maybe a little even too much over the last few years, all the time. I use it all the time. I absolutely love DoorDash. You can get it from the grocery store. You can get fast food. You can get restaurants. It feels like everything's on DoorDash, and anything that you need, you don't feel like getting up and going out and doing it yourself, you got DoorDash, and it does it for you. You can trust DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery, like I said, that delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You'll get exactly what you ordered, or we'll make it right. So sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourself. Want even more value? You can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with the Dash Pass membership. With easy substitutions right in the app and best-in-class customer support, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order, up to $20 value when you use code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off, up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKEDONNBA. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, Hal, now I'm going to force you to making some predictions and talking about the expectations for
This is how I get got.
for Cade's upcoming season. So before we get into predictions that we'll make, what do you think are reasonable expectations for the fan base to have of Cade entering his third season? This is the number one overall pick a few years ago. I had his brother on the podcast earlier in the offseason. He talked about, hey, don't minimize the expectations. Cade knew what he was getting when he got the number one overall pick. He could have tried to tank his stock, tried to go to Houston, stayed in Texas. But no, he wanted to go number one. He wanted to go to Detroit. He wants to be held to the standard of being the best guy in his class. So after hearing that, what do you think are reasonable expectations for Cade this season?
And this is where, you want me to put numbers on it, and it's so hard because there can be a ton of improvements made, right? Without necessarily seeing major box score changes because he's going to be sharing the rock so much more with Jaden Ivey and stuff, right? Compared to like that rookie season, where it's 18 points a game and 17 points a game and 6-ish assists, 6 rebounds. If he's at like 21, 7 and 7, like that's ridiculous, and that's not a huge leap from where he was as a rookie. So to me, it's more about. I think I would really love it to see if that true shooting percentage can get up to like 55%, and then I would really love if those free throws were up at like 5.5 instead of like 3.5 a game. Those are 2 areas where I would really, really love to see, and I think those are 2 areas of focus for him as well.
I think a reasonable expectation for the fan base this upcoming year, and I completely understand the who he's going to be playing with Ivy, Asar, and even Duren. They might run some actions through Duren at the high post, run some DHOs through him. But I still think that a reasonable expectation for fans to have is somewhere between 21, 23 points a game, 6 to 7 assists a game, 6 to 7 rebounds a game. But like you mentioned, the efficiency being much better. If Cade were to average 20 points a game, but like you mentioned, he's on like 58, 59 true shooting percentage, then that's a tremendous improvement. It doesn't have to be just in the points per game box. Now, obviously, you'd like to see the points per game box jump as well, along with the true shooting. Then you're really cooking there. But the efficiency probably is one of the biggest areas. I just think when it comes to raw box score numbers, I think it's reasonable for fans to expect him to get to a 20-plus point per game score while maintaining around 6 to 7 assists, 6 to 7 rebounds. Maybe try to knock the turnovers down a little bit, even though he's been a high turnover guy I heard that he's been high turnover guy really his whole career for real. So I think that's a reasonable expectation when it comes to box score numbers. I don't think it's fair, though, to expect all-star year for him, because I think the team has to back up that as well. And if the team is not good around whenever all-star voting ends, I think it's like late January or something. If they're not good at that point, he's not going to get votes. Now, if the Pistons are like decent and they're fighting for the play-in, yeah, and Cade's like leading it, yeah, okay, then I think he'll be an all-star. But like he needs team help for that. That's not just his own performance. He needs like his guys to help him in that department. So I'm not going to hold all-star over him. I don't think that's fair expectations. But could you say that an expectation is for him to be an all-star level player? Maybe he doesn't make the all-star game, but he's an all-star type of player. Maybe. I think that maybe would be fair to expect, but we'll see what happens. I think Cade's going to have a great season. And I don't think, after talking to his brother Cannon earlier in the offseason, I was trying to temper expectations for Cade because he's coming off an injury. He didn't get to play all last season. He's only 21, like that kind of stuff. And after listening to him talk about, Cade doesn't want that. He wants all these expectations. The sky's the limit, like all that stuff. Don't minimize anything, whatever. Okay, screw it. I take the training wheels off of the expectations. I'm just going to go full on with it. I think he should be an all-star level player this year. I think Cade thinks that's doable, and I think the fan base should think that's doable as well.
He should want to be. Absolutely. That's what you want him to be striving for. If we get to that all-star game and it's like, they're looking for like injury reserves and Cade's on that list, that's a major win, I think, for everybody involved. If we're at the point, where he's in contention, a top 3 guy for like most improved player, a win for everybody involved, right? One of the big things for me, personally, when I look at like the win loss, for this season, I think everybody's kind of expecting somewhere between like 30, 35 wins seems about right. And I kind of wonder if it's going to be a bit more front loaded because they might look to like trade guys like Bojan, Burks, Morris, at the deadline, right? They're expiring. So that's just when you would look at that. So maybe that end of season is a little tougher. But if we have a good start to the season, that might be really where you start to see some momentum. Can you get some media push behind Cade? That would be a thing I would love to see just in general is can the Pistons become, in Detroit, in the greater Michigan area, can the Pistons become a thing that's like a topic of conversation that I can have with my coworkers and they not just laugh at me. You know, and if that happens, it's going to be because Cade's, doing awesome. And that's
Yeah.
something I really hope happens.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I've said this on the podcast numerous times. I've guessed it on other podcasts. I've guessed it on Locked On NBA, and they've asked me this. And I've said this so many times. Like, Cade's a number 1 overall pick that doesn't get treated like a number 1 overall pick. Like,
Absolutely.
even like his rookie year, I said this like 2 weeks ago, I think. Every number 1 overall pick I've ever witnessed gets covered throughout his rookie season. Now, whether it's for a good reason that they're great or they're trash, like whether you're Anthony Bennett and they're covering you, could you like, how could you get picked number 1? Or if you're like a great, you get covered through your rookie season. Cade got drafted 1. I don't think they talked about him once. Like, I don't think nationally he was like talked about at all. And it's like, it's weird because like I said, it's not like I'm only asking for good coverage. It's just like usually any number 1 overall pick gets some type of coverage simply because they were the first pick. And Cade just is kind of floating all under the radar, not even by his own choice. It's not like he's tried to stay under the radar. It's just like the media just hasn't cared. But it seems like that's changing a little bit this offseason. He's gotten a lot of, he seems to be the popular name now for breakout season guy. He really wowed everybody at Team USA camp. Team USA wanted him on the roster. He told them no. Talk about that. That what kind of flex is that? Yeah, I could have been on Team USA, but I got better things I gotta do.
Look, he may have dodged a bullet with that one.
Yeah, I mean, with that, and well, maybe if they had Cade, maybe they win some stuff. Who knows? But, but anyways, my point is that it seems like you mentioned, I think you are going to get some of that this year because it seems like there finally is some kind of media push and hype around him that was absent. That I've never seen absent for another first overall pick before in my life. Can you think of a time where there's been a number 1 pick that just was absent of any, good or bad, just any coverage?
No, it's interesting because he's respected, right? Like it's not like people are like, Cade sucks and I don't want to talk about him. Like everyone's just like, Cade's pretty good and we'll see what happens in 3 years. And it's like, wait, we got the first pick. Like you should be talking about this a little bit. And people just, I think it was, he is such a professional character that there's not a lot to go on there. We like him a lot, but he doesn't really provide national media with like these flashy stories to go off of. And then I think everyone just kind of respected him. It's like, well, that Detroit situation sucks and we're not going to spend too much time. So that's where it's like, all right, the team is a little more exciting this year. And there's a little bit of upward momentum. And if you string some wins together, maybe you do get a little bit of that positive push and that could go a long way.
Yeah, I'm hopefully they can, like you said, if they can front load a lot of wins, that would be fun. I think he's going to get talked about a lot. I think everyone's waiting to see what he does, and I'm incredibly interested to see it happen. All right, Hal, now before we wrap up, I have to force you into predictions. So this is how we do the predictions with all the guests lately. I put them through a game of yes or no. And there's no
At least you pick the numbers, right?
No, it's not. I won't say numbers, but it's
okay.
simply you have to say yes or no. There is no explanation of no, but no, there's none of that. You are simply held to yes or no. James has went through it. Omari has went through it. Bryce has went through it. So now you're next up to bat. You don't again.
I'm not good at short, man.
And all my listeners, make sure you clip these predictions and use this against Hal and Mark. make sure you let him know how wrong or right he was. All right,
they never have a problem doing that.
All right, first one. Will Cade win most improved player of the year?
Sure. Yeah.
No, yes or no? Yes, he's sure
yeah,
is not.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sure want him to.
Will Cade be an all-star this season?
No.
Will Cade, okay, I lied to you. I do have a number here. Will Cade score more than 23 points a game this year?
23. No.
Will Cade shoot over 35% from 3 this year?
Yes.
All right, and I think this one right here, I'll let you expand on this one a little bit because it is a topic of discussion. Do you believe that the Cade, Ivy, Asar, Duran core will see them A, in the starting lineup at some point this season, and B, do you think it's going to show good signs of working long term?
Yes and yes.
Do you want to?
I think basically you're asking, is Asar going to enter the starting lineup? I would think Ivy and Duran are going to be starters, barring injury, et cetera, et cetera. So now you're asking, okay, are there a couple games where Asar gets in there either because Bogey's out or traded or something like that? And I think, yeah, that's easy. Do I think they're going to play 50 plus games as a starting lineup? Probably not. But I think we're going to see some of them starting. I think we'll see plenty of them closing. And then is it going to work? I think, I would think that this is going to be unusual, right? I don't necessarily know that they're going to blow people's doors off, but like Asar, I'm kind of mad that Bryce got to take Asar because I love that kid. The kind of the defensive energy, the connective passing, like there's ways that these lineups can be like really great in transition and just really energetic. And I think kind of throwing those lineups out as a kind of a counter to maybe some of the more steady-handed stuff that Cade's going to want to do, just that kind of Luka style heliocentrism. I think you can do that, and then you do 5-8 minutes of that, and then you kind of bring on Asar, and you start running and gunning a little bit more, and I think that stuff is going to pop, even if it's not necessarily like, oh, the offensive rating and defensive rating are amazing. Like, I think you're going to see that stuff, and then as Asar grows, I really think he's talented as all get out. I love that kid.
I absolutely love Asar as well. Before we wrap up the podcast, what I'm really looking forward to with Cade and Asar, some inverted pick and rolls. I think that could be so lethal, dude. It could be so crazy. Have either Cade or Asar as a short roller going to as a decision maker, and imagine Asar rolling to the rim off a pick and roll with Duran in the dunker spot and Ivy and Bojan like spotting up. Either Asar
all those little Spain actions where you've got two of them diving to the rim together. You can run Ivy, Asar, Cade stuff, in 3-man game, all that stuff. All the stuff
they're all such good.
You wanted Hamidou to do,
Yes.
Asar can do all of that.
Except he's a higher feel, higher processor, decision maker. It could get lethal, dude. It could get crazy. I'm so interested.
And I hear a lot of people who are really concerned about the non-shooting thing for Asar. And I get it. You want him to shoot long term, but like if he just has Hami's season, maybe a little steadier defensively and stuff, because Hami could be a little chaotic at times. If he just does that as a rookie, that's awesome. That's really all you want to see. It's just this guy who comes in, has energy, makes a couple extra passes that maybe Hami wouldn't make. That's great. And I think you can see that meshing into lineups with Cade and Ivy, right away.
And I think if one of the things I've mentioned, and we've kind of drifted into a SAR topic, so this will be the last thing we say. Short. This will be the last thing we say, and I'll wrap up the podcast. But one of the things I talked about with the Thompson twins in general when I was talking before the draft, and I was doing some like draft profiling, is that, with Diallo, I did mention that the Diallo role could be something he could just slide right into, but the difference is Diallo was a complete non-shooter. Asar will be a shooter that maybe just can't shoot. Like, I think it's two different things. A guy who just doesn't take threes and you won't even take them is different from a guy who takes them but just can't hit them at a higher rate. Kind of like you were mentioning earlier with Donovan Mitchell before he was a good pull-up three-point shooter. Like, simply taking them provides a different level of gravity than someone who is just like, I'm not taking this, I'm not going to shoot this. So it's like, it's different levels of gravity, and it helps an offense, even if he's not hitting at a high. Now, obviously, you want them to hit at a higher clip, but it helps. It affects the offense in different ways than someone who is just, I'm gonna catch this in the corner. I'm just gonna stand here. I'm not gonna take this shot, or I'm gonna dribble in the three guys like Stan Van Gundy used to talk about. One of my funniest quotes. I remember from a Pistons coach. I'm going on a tangent, but one of the funniest quotes I remember is years ago when I was younger, when Stan Van Gundy was coach, and someone mentioned something to him after a game or practice or something about Stanley Johnson shooting too many threes. And Stan was like, he's shooting open threes. What do you want? You guys just want him to drive into the paint into three people? You guys don't know what you're talking about. He just went like, he was spazzing about like basically like telling guys, oh, stop shooting threes, just drive to the rim. Well, if you have an open three, take the three. You're driving to the rim with there's three people there. It's not going to help. I don't know why I said that quote. It just got popped in my mind. But I love Stan Van
You
Gundy.
mentioned Stan Van Gundy quotes, and all I can hear is form a bleeping wall, and then whatever you can put together, put it together. You know, that clip of Stan Van Gundy dribbling is
Stan Van Gundy's great, dude. His quotes are just great, man. He's great. All right, but that's it. We'll wrap up the podcast there. Hal, thank you for coming on the podcast, man. You guys can follow him on Twitter at HalBridius. Until the next podcast, I'll see you guys later. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe and peace out.